Greetings, happy Feast of Tabernacles, happy Hag Sukkot to everyone as we gather on this day. Let's hear the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yud He Vav He Eloheinu, Yud He Vav He Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed Adonai Adonai Yeshua HaMashiach hu Adonai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Yeshua HaMashiach hu Adonai. You are supreme. You are supreme. You have risen from the dead. You are supreme. Every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Yeshua, the Messiah, you are supreme. Amen, brethren. It's a great privilege for us to be able to gather like this, and an opportunity for us to gather like this before our eternal, to be turned away from the world in every aspect as Elohim makes possible for us to be in his presence, for us to be concerned about the things most dear to him, the gathering of his people together. As it is written concerning the Feast of Tabernacles, that all the people would gather with the poor, with the strangers, all, no one left out on during this time of ingathering, this Feast of Sukkot, this Feast of Booths, this Feast of Tabernacles. We thank Elohim that we could be a part of this and have the mindset, and may he guide our minds to better understand exactly what he wants us to do in this appointed time. Dear brethren, a little bit about this appointed time, this Sukkot. This message is going to be about unity. It wasn't my intention to speak today, but situations occurred where I have to do the presentation today, and I thank Elohim that he quickly directed my thoughts on what I should cover today. And what we will talk about is the reuniting the body of Messiah. This is a message I taught a few months ago, actually, possibly last year, late last year, but I will cover it today in context of Sukkot. So what is Sukkot? What is the Feast of Tabernacles? What is the Feast of Booths? Number one, it says, to know you dwell in booths, as our sister read from the Leviticus 23, verses 33, and then verses 42 to 43. To know that Elohim made you dwell in booths. That's why those who are commanded to observe it, the ancient Israelites, were told to do it so that they could remember that Elohim made their ancestors dwell in booths throughout their journeys. What is the significance of this? The significant meaning to his people is this, that the Eternal himself dwelt with them in a tabernacle, in a booth, as described for us in Exodus chapter 29, verses 42, verses 43 and 45, that he commanded Moses to make a tabernacle, a tent of meeting, a mishkan, ohel, for him to appear. So he dwelt in booths in their presence, setting the standard, and he made them, his people, dwell in booths as he did. That's the significance. That's why it was so important for them to remember that now while they were in the land, remember that he made their prior generations dwell in booths as he was in a booth with them. So he arranged their specific placement of their tents. The 12 tribes dwelt in a specific arrangement. It wasn't a disorganized body. It was an organized body, as shown in Numbers chapter 3, verses 21 to 38. He made them journey and to camp at his command, according to Numbers chapter 19, verses 15, 23. At his command, they went forth. At his command, they set forth. Sometimes one day, sometimes several days, sometimes longer. But at his command, they journeyed. And not only at his command, but in a specific manner and order, which we don't have time to go into these details, but you can see the details in the specific order, how he set up his people in a magnificent way, as recorded for us in Numbers chapter 10, verses 1 to 2, and verses 11 to 12, verses 14, and especially verses 25 through 28. We see this, how he organized them in a specific order. They did not just pitch their tent in any old way, in any old fashion, in any chaotic. It was well organized, brethren. Beautiful, magnificent scene. Also, this is shown in Numbers chapter 10, verses 33 through 35 and 36. So that's why, again, that the generations may know that he made them dwell in booths as he did, and then how well organized and united they were as a unit. And he would make them dwell in booths again after their captivity. He would somehow cause them to dwell in booths. You could see that in Hosea chapter 12, verse 9. How about the observation? How it's to be observed. With the Eternal as head, the people were organized and functioned as a unit, as a single organism, or as a body, moving when and where the Spirit wills, especially for us today. Remember, with the living cloud by day and fire by night leading them, they were a fearsome force, living and moving freely. They were not bound with walls. They were not bound with gates. No, they were free with the living power, Most High, guiding them in the cloud by day, in the fire by night. You see this in Numbers chapter 22, verses 1 to 3. And in these accounts in Numbers, we see the account with the prophet Balaam. Balaam in Numbers 24, verses 1 through 5, the situation where Balaam became so Balak, he became so fearful and his situation. He was terrified. They were afraid of the people of Israel. You could imagine over 1 million people, well organized, with a pillar of cloud by day, a bright cloud. It wasn't a gloomy cloud. It was a bright cloud, and the cloud covered the entire multitude. It wasn't just a column. It covered the entire multitude of a camp of over 1 million people spread out in such a way so that they don't hinder each other, so there are no accidents, in an organized fashion. So you could imagine why the people with Balaam, why they were so afraid seeing such a host coming their way, seemingly to lick up everything. But in truth, wherever they went, they left a blessing. It wasn't as Balaam thought that they would have destroyed what was in their path. Rather, they left a blessing along the way. So that the command to remember I made you live in booths involves all this incredible dynamic of the eternal, as Yud Heh Vav Heh, being head, commanding, guiding, and protecting and empowering his people as they lived in booths, in tabernacles, in Sukkot, in Sukkots. Each one living in a sukkah or Sukkot plural, under his care and leadership. See, brethren, that's what Sukkot is really about. It's about remembering. It's not just getting caught up in camping or getting caught up in stressing over building the booths, especially not today. It's more so that this could be remembered, this unique relationship with the creator of heaven and earth. More than creator of heaven and earth, the first reality overall, the living power over all, the infinite one. This relationship is what this is all about today. And today, this is what we need to focus on when we're observing Sukkot. People get lost in the physical things and don't remember. It is so that you can remember that I made you dwell in booths. The focus is not to be in the booths themselves, but it's to remember what was done back then, the relationship that was there. So in knowing this, we can look forward to the future with Elohim, with our eternal. Elohim will himself provide a tabernacle, not man. You see, there's all this ideas, teachings, false teachings about a new temple being made by man and all of this stuff. This is not scriptural. It's taking the written text out of context, not seeing what it's referring to when it talks about the building of a temple, especially as seen in the book of Ezekiel. People think this was for our future. It's not for the future. It was for the intended future of the children of Israel when they were in captivity. The whole message there in Ezekiel about the temple is that Elohim was telling the people, look, you're in captivity, but if you will repent, if you will mourn, if you can have this, I will bring you back and you can have this. You can have this temple. That's what Ezekiel is about. It's not about a future temple when Messiah returns. I mean, we could easily see this just by the information, because Ezekiel himself is the one who Elohim would have put to sanctify the altar. Okay, so it was an if situation. The people never met that criteria. They never repented. So Elohim never gave them the full instructions to build the temple, neither did they. Rather, when they returned, they built a small temple. They rebuilt a temple, which was a shadow of what it was under the leadership of Ezra and those with him. But the temple you see described in Ezekiel is not a future temple of Messiah when Messiah returns. No, it was an offer Elohim was giving the people to encourage them to repent, which they never did. Look it over yourself. It's very, very clear. But people get caught up in the description of the temple. They don't read the criteria. They don't read the covenant if. It's if they did this, this would happen. And they never did. But in reality, what Elohim does promise, which is not dependent on any man, or any man's work is a future tabernacle that he himself will build. Because as recorded in Haggai chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, verses 10 through 14, even the work of the building of that temple that was being done under Ezra, that reparation, was regarded as an unclean work. Read it in Haggai chapter 2, verses 6, 9, verses 10 and 14. But he told David before that time in 2 Samuel verses 7, verses 1 through 11, verse 17, that he would make him a temple. He would build for him a temple when he thought of building Elohim a temple. He told him, I will build you a temple. And Isaiah, and the prophet Isaiah was given visions of that temple. In Isaiah chapter 4, verses 2, 5, and 6. It speaks of a fiery temple, a canopy of fire over which that will cover the entirety of the land. In Zechariah chapter 2, verses 5, more description is given to it as with having walls of fire. This is what Elohim will prepare for his people when the Messiah returns. There won't be any man-made structure for Elohim, for the sovereign son of Elohim to come in the midst of his. But no, there will be a temple that will never, a construct that will never be destroyed, you see. For this construct, it will be from Elohim, so that even when the new heavens and earth come, when this present earth is destroyed, this construct made by Elohim's hand will not be destroyed, brethren. So, moving on, let me conclude this part with the purpose of the tabernacle, and then we'll move on, believe it or not, to our true teaching, which I'll try to not be as long as the original teaching. So, being the eternal sanctuary, that is, Elohim himself is the eternal sanctuary, he will make the first fruits, which are us, shelters as well as he is. He is an eternal sanctuary. We read all about that in Psalms chapter 62, verses 1 and 2, Psalms chapter 90, verses 1 and 2, Psalms chapter 91, verses 1 and 2 and 9, Isaiah chapter 30, verses 19 to 21, Isaiah 32, verses 1 to 2, Revelations 21, 22 to 24, all talks about Elohim being an everlasting, the eternal temple. But he will make of us little temples like him, little sanctuaries like him. We who are of the first fruits, none other. It's those who have made sacrifice, who have offered their lives, who have picked up their stakes, their crosses, their execution stakes in their lifetimes, and partake of the first resurrection, who will be a part of the kingdom. Those who are in the second resurrection will enter the kingdom, but really not be a part of the governing system of the millennium. Why? Because they will have been resurrected after that period. But by the love and grace of Elohim, as their names are found in the book of life, they too will enter into the city after they have gone through a rejuvenation, a cleansing, a healing process through the living waters and through the leaves and fruits of the tree of life described in Revelations. So Sukkot, brethren, the Feast of Tabernacle, shows that Elohim, the eternal, is the sanctuary, and he will make us sanctuaries who will be united in him forever. And you could see this in 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 1 through 6. So in context of all of this, brethren, today, living scattered, not united in so many ways, it's okay for us to be apart physically in the sense of location. That's okay. That's normal. But still, we can unite. We see very much examples of that all throughout the scriptures, especially in the New Covenant scriptures, with the congregations, wherever they were in their different locations. They did not have internet. They did not have motorized travel or any such conveniences, but yet they made sure they stayed in touch. When there was a need, they put all of them, put their minds and resources together to take care of the need. No one said, well, that's that congregation's issue. No. When one congregation was exalted, all were exalted. They shared their resources. When there was trouble, all was trouble. But while one was trouble, the others were fasting or working to help them on their behalf. So today, what's our excuse? There's none, except abstinent hearts, fears and doubts. Lack of faith has divided the people of Messiah even in the spiritual sense, where they're not united. If something happens to one congregation, the others shrug their shoulders. It's not really their concern. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's like this because the congregations, many of those who claim to be congregations, for one, are really not the congregations of Elohim. And many who are of the congregations of Elohim are kind of trapped in those congregations, not yet realizing they're in the wrong setting, that they need to come out of what's false and find their brethren and who are true and unite with them. That's what we need to be doing. So this is why we have this horrible mess. In a previous 2 teachings I showed how we are his workmanship. We are the workmanship of Elohim. In that teaching, we saw that we are not our own, but are bought with a price. We are the sheep of his pasture. He is the leader. He's that shining light by night and cloud by day, with a specific purpose and works foreordained by Elohim. We don't make our own things. He has already given us what to do. Just like all of us work or have worked under an employer, when we are hired by that employer, we don't set the goals. We don't set the vision statement. We don't set how things are done. We follow the policies of the company, of the employer. We are all Elohim's employees, those of us who belong to him. As a matter of fact, he calls us graciously his fellow workers. So we don't make up what to do, how to do it. We have to find out in the manual what we are to do and do exactly the foreordained works of that Elohim has given for his employees to do. So in that teaching, we concluded that being the case, we must do what Elohim assigned as he required and specified in the scriptures. So that was the first of 2 teachings. The second teaching was this, that the use of different names has become an encasing barrier, works as an encasing barrier between the different groups that keeps them divided. You see, the division came by personalities, different personalities with different ideas. In other words, unfamiliar spirits, people that are teaching something contrary to what Elohim is really saying. Teachers who do that. And then you have the personality of cults, where you have a bunch of people of the same mind supporting those false teachers. And so many fall away. Many are divided. Yes, but then what happens? These groups, when they divide, they don't call themselves anymore the congregation of Elohim. In a way, it's good for the wise, but it's bad for those who are not so wise. Good for the wise in the sense that they separate themselves from the true congregation of Elohim. Not so good for the not so keen, because they don't distinguish what is the congregation of Elohim and not. And so they follow anything. And that's why many, even some of us, I know myself, I was trapped in some of these false groups for years, but I always wanted to do what was right. but I couldn't do what was right because I was I was following what they were doing, not knowing why there was the conflict there. Conflict in the sense, I want to keep the Sabbath. Nobody wants to keep the Sabbath. I want to be faithful. People only talk about being faithful. Okay, so, but when I was able to find brethren of like mind, then I was able to do the things I was supposed to be doing. So you see, we need to get out of that trap. So the different names make it now where now it's sealed. Well, I am this organization, you are that organization. So we have really nothing to do with each other. And those leaders, so-called leaders, love it because now they can keep what they were looking for anyway, which is usually mostly money or a name for themselves. And now under this different group name, all the glory, all the money is theirs. And all the other ones operate these little cirque, these little churches or whatever they call them in the same horrible way, causing blasphemy of the sacred name and reviling of the true body of Messiah. So different names for the different organizations serve as wedges that keeps them apart. These things must not be. So to remove these problematic wedges of division, we concluded we need to reinstate the one name used most frequently in the scriptures to identify the organization of Elohim in order to unite and achieve the works of Elohim. So that all can see, so we can see each other truly as one. So my fellow brother in Texas does not have another name. He doesn't call himself Congregation Hashamayim or Beth Habesorah or whatever name they might come up with. They don't. No. It's it'll be the congregation of Elohim. Or if the brother wants to use the Greek, it'll be the Ecclesias Theos in Texas, or in Hebrew, the Adat Elohim in Texas. That's the scriptural precedent. When you read throughout the Old Testament, especially in the New Covenant, the congregations of Elohim always identifies people as his congregation. And they were distinguished only by their location. Nothing else. No one's name. No one took the claim to be the congregation of Elohim. No, they didn't do that either. But what they did, they humbly identified themselves by their location. We are the congregation of Elohim in Rome. We are the congregation of Elohim in Judea. We are the congregation of Elohim in such and such and such and such place. And it's beautiful that way. Then we are all one with only one thing that distinguishes us, our locations. That's it. So that's what we concluded in part 2. So in part 3, it's reuniting the body. This is Sukkot. This is what it's all about. When Yeshua returns, he's going to return to gather his people from the four corners of the world. Gather his people. Raise the dead, gather them. Those who are still alive, raise them, transform them and gather them as one, even as he is one. Okay, to himself. But until that time, we as his body, because we're commanded to be his body, we're commanded to be united, even as he prayed for in John chapter 17. We must make it our business, those of us that are truly his congregation. We must recognize the issues. Okay, we can't, as I use this, try to paint the inside of the house when the ceiling is broken. As I've said many times before, right now, the ceiling, the walls of the body are broken. We are scattered. The enemy has picked us up, falsely tricked us, and then smashed us to the floor. We are like pieces of a puzzle. Those of us that are truly his are like pieces of a puzzle. We must step back, look at the whole picture in the scriptures and see where we fit and come back together and be one. And the more we reunite, And then when those pieces of the puzzles come together by his Spirit, he will fuse those different shapes that make up the puzzle into one single shape. That he'll do when he returns. But right now, we must get the pieces together, brethren. In the Old Covenant scriptures, I won't go through everything because there's just too much here to cover. Maybe if the Eternal permits another time. But in the Old and New Covenant, the believers strove earnestly to stay united. Okay? And you could see some examples on the screen. I won't really read them, but you could read them on the screen. See, the community of Abraham stayed together throughout their journeys. Okay, as seen in Genesis chapter 12 and 5. They stayed together throughout the hardships, throughout the uncertainties, throughout their different opinions and levels of faith among themselves. Did you think all these people had the same exact understanding, the same exact faith, the same exact confidence, the same exact level of righteousness? No, but they stayed together because they knew there was a goal. The goal was to be faithful to inherit something following their leader, Abraham. And whose leader, the leader of Abraham, was the wonderful Elohim. So they stayed united, leaving Ur all the way through Canaan, through Egypt. They stayed together. What else? What else? So that's Abraham. The early Israelites, tribes, adamantly, I'm going to add, adamantly stayed united for the benefit of the whole congregation. And at that point, it was to possess the promised land and to defeat the surrounding adversaries. That was why they stayed together as a congregation. In their journeys with Moses and Joshua, they stayed together, as you could see on the screen, Numbers chapter 20 through Numbers chapter 32 through verses 20 to 23. I have it on the screen for you. They stayed together for that purpose, to enter the covenant land, the land of Canaan. Also, the whole congregation of Israel assemble in Shiloh. That's an example in Joshua verses 18, verses 1. Now the whole congregation of Israel, of the children of Israel, assemble together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of meeting there. And the land was subdued before them. That sense of unity, it's urgency. It's not a convenience. It's something that's necessary for the success and power and to achieve the foreordained work of the new covenant congregation of Elohim. You see, we have a job to do, foreordained works that can't really be achieved to the glory of Elohim as things are. But now we in this generation are being called to gather, to understand that this is what needs to be done. It's not impossible. It's very possible. Just like you, each one of us, our hearts were touched to be here together. Many hearts can be touched. And that's what we need, is the hearts that will be touched. We're not looking to gather everybody. That would be wonderful. But that's not really the objective. It's more quality than quantity. We're looking for those of the heart, with a disposed heart, who Elohim has put the same calling. When we gather ourselves together, we have for those of you who don't know, we have about a year to get this done. About a year. It's not limited to a year, but we're striving to achieve this within a year, to reach all that we can who are of this heart, to unite even as we have. And watch what Elohim will do when we put our hands to the plow, as we will see towards the end of this portion of this teaching. But let's move on so I could be quick. So they assemble there to set up the tabernacle of meeting, and the land was subdued, was there for their grabbing by the working of Elohim, because they stayed faithful together as one. Now they stayed together for the benefit of the whole. They were ready to fight 3 of their own tribes who they thought were abandoning the congregation, as seen in Joshua chapter 22, verses 11 to 14. I won't read it, but it's on the screen. And it's being recorded, so it'll be captured on the video. A person can pause and read it. So that's how important it was. I think I'll read this point because so you could understand how important it was for their unity. Now the children of Israel heard someone say, behold, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh have built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan. So they thought there was some sort of division here, because the altar was not supposed to be there in the region of the Jordan on the children of Israel's side. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of children of Israel gathered. What did they do? Did they scatter? Did they divide? No, they gathered together at Shiloh to go to war against them. See, they thought there was some sort of division. So they all organized themselves to put an end to that division. But then the children of Israel sent Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, to the children of Reuben, to the children of Gad, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, according to the law in the land of Gilead, according to the law. Before you make war, you go and make sure you call for peace and make sure we understand. And then with him 10 rulers, 1 ruler each from the chief house of every tribe, and each one was the head of the house of his father among the divisions of Israel. And we know, to cut to the chase, there was no fighting. There was clarity. They came to understand the covenant that was made with Moses at that time. So they so they did not go to war, but they were ready to. Why? Because they thought there was going to be some schism there. That's how serious it was. They fought against the tribe of Benjamin in response to a heinous crime some Benjamites committed against a Levite family. They did not say, oh, that's Benjamin's business, it's not our business. No, it was the business of the whole congregation of Israel when one person did right. We don't go, of course, today attacking each other, but we need to be in communication with each other to encourage each other, to spur each other to good works. But back then, they were ready. Actually, they fought against the children of it was a horrible fight when you read through it, through Judges chapter 20, verses 1 and 48 and beyond. It was really a bloody fight. But they had, because there's no schism. There's no room for that. Let's move on. So all these show that the patriarch Abraham and the early covenant congregation kept themselves accountable, kept themselves united and accountable to obedience in unity according to the covenant of Elohim. We must unite as Messiah. We of the new covenant must unite as Messiah expects and requested in prayer. We know in John chapter 10, verses 16, he says, and other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock, one shepherd. How many Yeshuas do you know? It's only one supreme Yeshua, one elect one Mashiach. There are not a bunch of different little flocks all over just doing their own thing. Yeshua expects one flock. So when we see there are a bunch of flocks scattered, different personalities, we who know the word of it must work to fix that problem in Yeshua. And those who are of the right spirit will cooperate and unite. Those who don't want it will just exclude themselves. In John 17, verse 11, it says, now I am no longer in the world, but these are in the world. And I come to you, speaking with the Heavenly Father. Holy Father, keep through your name those whom you have given me, that they may be one as we are. Not as scattered bodies. Verse 21 to 23 of chapter 17 says, that they all may be one, as you, Father, Abba, are in me, and I in you, and they also may be one in us, at the whole world may believe you have sent me, and the glory which you gave me, I have given to them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. Let those with ears to hear by the Messiah's words. We know he expects his true servants to unite very cohesively. It's not just some sort of simple unity, cohesively tight as a body. That's why we're described as a body. A little reflection here. So you see that that the world may believe that you sent me. How will the world believe? How will the world believe? By our unity. It's not by fighting and over things and arguing shamefully over things, as I see so much on the media. We must not be a part of that. We must be agents fulfilling this prayer, understanding Messiah's heart, core desire. What's the point of arguing about the name, arguing about calendars, dividing about this, dividing about that, quote unquote, dividing about truth, when we have this situation where we're not even one? Because the world has to believe that Elohim sent Yeshua. That belief comes by our union together. If only people could understand this. Once the world can see us united, once the world can see how we carry out the commandments of Elohim through love among ourselves, we must be that light. They must be looking at us doing these things. Then they will know there is something divine that happened. Then they will know, no matter what they might have thought before, that truly the eternal being has visited these people. That's how they're going to know. We got to understand this. What does it say here? That they also may be one in us. That why? What's the purpose? That the world may believe that you sent me. The world will not believe, in other words, that the Father has sent Yeshua if those who are supposed to represent Yeshua are not united and far from united in this horrible mess that we are in. Do you see the problem? I hope your eyes and your heart, your whole being is being open to what we need to focus on. Do you notice that no one's believing? Hardly. Rather than believing, they're mocking, they're insulting. That's how far the congregation has been broken. But in this generation, there has to be those who will revive it, because in every generation, Yeshua has his congregation. You've heard me say this before. Sometimes there are lots of people that gather as his congregation. Sometimes there are a few. I don't know what the outcome will be for this generation, but I know his congregation will be united. It might be only us, then we will be that congregation, but it's highly unlikely. By his mercies, I trust there'll be more. I don't know how much more, but we must gather the congregation together to the end, the ultimate end, so that the world may know that the Father has sent Yeshua into the world. so that the unbelievers will not mock as well. If Yeshua is Messiah, how come there's no unity and organization, blah, and so on among his people? Their questioning is justifiable, and the behavior of all the people are by what they see. But when they see this, Yeshua knows what he's talking about. When they see this unity, as found in John chapter 10:16, as is on the screen, people will see it. Do you notice in verse 11 he says it, so that the world may, so that they may know that no, verse 21 says, so that they may know you have sent me. And also verse 23 says that they may be perfect, and that the world may know that you have sent me. Twice Yeshua says this, that you have sent me and love them as you have loved me. But if we're scattered and divided and fighting over names, fighting over a Hebrew that no one really even knows today, is just based on scholarly ideas. No one knows how the words are actually pronounced, brethren. There's no point in fighting, even arguing about these things. And thanks to Elohim, despite the errors, despite some edits and changes and in the early translations that we've had, it's relative, it's safe and faithful. And that's how most of us have come to faith. It's not, though, there's no really real issue with the Bibles that we have. I don't know about the new ones being made now with the worldly agenda getting their hands on it, but the ancient translations are fine. They were not perfect. My goodness, why are we stressing? Even in the times of Jeremiah, the scriptures weren't perfect. Elohim said so himself. He said, beware of the lying pen of the scribes. So what are we arguing about? Rather, we should humble ourselves and say, Elohim, we don't know everything. Unite us, unite our hearts, unite our minds. Feed us with the bread from heaven. That's what we should be doing. Let those who have ears to hear the words of Messiah. So we must unite, whether in suffering or in honor, as shown in First Corinthians, let's see, chapter 12, verses 25, actually First Colossians chapter 12, verses 25 to 27. We must stay united. There should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all members rejoice with it. Now you are the body of Messiah and members individually. Now you are this. Okay, so Ephesians 4, endeavoring to keep, that means working hard in every way to keep the unity of the Spirit. In what? In the bond of peace. Not arguing over words. There's no room or need for that. Elohim, once we gather together, will fix all of these things. He always does. He didn't say for us to divide and scatter. You never see that. You never see that as being what Elohim requires. Even after the golden calf situation, when that wasn't allowed, let alone. Okay, it's Elohim that does, but the body of Messiah shouldn't be scattered. If we believe, we should be one. Now you are the body of Messiah if this happens. No schism. Ephesians 4, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Verses 13, till we all come to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature and fullness of Messiah, not to the stature of any other person, not to the fullness of any other person, not to the measure of any other person, for no one is perfect, only Messiah. See, till we come. What does that tell us? It tells us that when we gather together, we should not have the false expectation of those who are divisive to say, oh, we need to divide, we need to unite in truth. Yes, uniting in truth doesn't mean you know everything, but rather uniting in the truth, meaning you're uniting in Elohim, uniting in Messiah, who is the truth. Thy word is truth, O Elohim. Thy word is truth. So it's uniting in that word. It doesn't mean we know everything it says, because it says until we come to that unity of the faith. But our efforts, our minds should be united. But the unity of the faith, unity of right understanding and knowledge of the Son of Ellohim will come in time by the working of his Spirit. We have to be patient with one another. If a brother believes this about prophecy and another believes, that's nothing to divide about. Rather, these occasions where we don't understand are actually opportunities, if we are truly his, to come together even that much more, to pray. So, oh Elohim, we have differences of understanding about these things. Help us to understand. That is the mind of Messiah. That's uniting in truth. Nehemiah chapter 1:8. Remember, I pray. So being scattered is a state of unfaithful, which leads to failure. That's what being scattered is. It's a state for the unfaithful. You see, the congregations of Elohim in a way were unfaithful. That's why these things happen. Check the scriptures. As early on in the book of Acts, the first persecution experienced, major persecution experienced by the whole body of Messiah, was when they started to complain. Oh, we're not being tended to, we're this and that. That shouldn't have happened on both ends. But there should be that elements of patience. Yes, they're not tending to us, but let's see what's going on. Let's not fuss and complain. And on the other end, those who should be tending to them, that is the Hellenists, the Grecian believers as found in Acts, they should have try to be more on top of their work. So they started, and shortly after this, the persecution started. They were scattered. But Elohim caused good to come out of that, but he brought them back. They were stabilized later on. They were established, the scriptures tell us later on. So being scattered is a state of being unfaithful. People following personalities. Oh, he's a prophet. Let's follow him. Oh, he's a better speaker than he is. Or X, Y, and Z, all of these things, as if all good gifts don't come from Elohim. All good gifts come from Elohim. You don't abandon a true brother or sister to follow someone else because we think they're a better speaker or whatever. We don't do that. We unite each other. That better speaker may not be as kind as the brother or sister who may not speak so well. Elohim gives his gifts as he sees fit, but we need to stay together and work together. So looking at Nehemiah chapter 1, Matthew 12, and 23, all of these things show that being divided is a condition that's for the unfaithful, leads to failure. Do you see that on the screen, brothers? When you get a chance, read that. So look at the benefits of unity. But before I said, let's read Messiah's words a little bit in this. I got this. This is important. Remember, I pray the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among. Why? Why were they? Because they were unfaithful. Not a good thing. Matthew 12:25 said, but Yeshua knew their thoughts and says, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. Every city or house divided against itself will not stand. No, division is not a good thing. Never a good thing. Verse 30, he who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. It's not just a matter, well, I'm not going to do anything to divide, but are you gathering? Are you gathering? Are we gathering? It's not an option for the new covenant congregation, because he says he who does not gather is in effect scattering. So you see that, brethren? That's why it's so important for us to understand, know what really matters, because we've been deceived by people that are taking things that are important, but using them to divide the people. The name of Elohim, the name of Yeshua is pronounced this way, it's pronounced that way, division. Oh, the calendar. Oh, this and that. You keep it that way. We're going to divide. No, that's foolishness. With all these things, people, the true servants of, oh, wow, we have different ideas about how the names should be pronounced. Oh, wow, we have different calendar systems. We better come together and pray to Elohim to unite us. That's the answer, not scattering. Last verse on this, Matthew 23:27. Oh, Jerusalem, the one who kills the Naviim, the kills the prophet, and stone those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. How often? Were they a perfect people he was trying to gather? Look at the history of Elohim trying to gather he was never trying to gather a perfect people. He was never trying to gather people of perfect understanding and faith. And no, he was gathering a stiff-necked people whom he wanted to instill and show unity. So don't fall for the lies out there by the divisive people saying, oh, we need to unite in truth. They're taking the unite in truth out of context and using it to divide the body of Messiah. We don't need to agree on everything to unite. We need to come together knowing that we don't, and what Elohim expects of us to unite, and beg him for mercy to unite our hearts and our minds, and to give us the patience and how to work with each other despite our shortcomings. That's what we need to do, brethren. Woe to those who spread lies and divide the body of Messiah. They will have their reward. So the benefits of unity. Okay, we saw the problem. Let's look at the benefits. So I got to try to conclude. I'm far from where I need to be, but I'll try to run through this. So let's bring up where it says Malachi chapter 3, verses 16. Okay, so that'll be on the screen. I won't read it for you because I have to get to the conclusion. So Elohim greatly values our active communing together in him. This only happens in unity. Elohim values that, as seen in Malachi chapter 3, verses 16. And Elohim enables efficient communication of Elohim's messages through unity. Without unity, those things don't happen, as seen in Exodus chapter 3, verses 16, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 10, and Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 12. Those references will be on the screen. Look at them. So Elohim enables this. He values when we commune together in him, and he enables proper communication of his messages when we unite. When we don't unite, he does not do that, except for a few, just as Yeshua, because the people who were not of secret did not have faith, did not have right, and he only did a few miracles. For who? For the few who had the faith. So Elohim will work only among the few who believe. And therefore, for that particular generation, hardships will happen because there are few doing the work. There are few. And so if there are few, you can expect problems. So if unity fosters a state of pleasantness, you know the famous Psalm 133, verse 1, the Song of Ascents of David. It says, behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Unity among the brethren is pleasant. It allows us to receive answers to our prayers and fellowship of Messiah when we unite. Again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by the Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, in my authority, I am there in the midst. When is he there in the midst? Where two or three are gathered together. Do you understand that? Now, Elohim is merciful. If there is a brother or sister who is isolated due to no fault or of him or her, then Elohim is gracious, will he? But if a brother or sister has has the means of uniting and chooses not to, Elohim will not do this, because it's for where two or three are gathered together in my name. Not gathered together knowing everything, gathered together in my authority. What's it? I call you together. I prayed for you together. He tells us to do that. That's the authority we have to do it in his name. He will be there in their midst. So that's why it's important. And that's why so many prayers fall to the floor, because we have people isolated here, isolated. Nope. Come together. Come together. It also it allows us to act unanimously and keep safe together. Okay? When we need to make decisions, it has to be done unanimously. We don't make decisions for one congregation. The decisions of Elohim are made for all congregations, and that's why that unity is important. The whole matter of the calendar, as we talked about, can be solved almost in a matter of minutes, because we know exactly how to do it. Elohim teaches the congregation of Elohim. It's in the scriptures. We know it's not a hard thing. It's been hard because we have leaders, that so-called leaders, that are divisive, and they won't unite with this brother or that. They let the calendar issues divide them rather than seeing a need to unite, to gather, to pray. Rather, they divide, and we so weaken the body that much more, because these decisions must be made unanimously. Gather yourselves to flee. And Yeshua said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel prophet standing where it ought, let the reader understand. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Okay, they didn't. When you notice, they didn't do this. This is Yeshua warning his disciples. They did not escape as a scattered people. They planned it. They were united. They knew what they had to do when the time came. They all knew what to look for. They were in agreement. And when the time came, they left, and they were spared from the destruction. Therefore, Hebrews 13, therefore, let us go forth to him outside the camp, bearing his reproach. For here we have no continuing city, but we seek the one to come. You see, in the book of Hebrews, reflecting on what Yeshua said, see, the Hebrews knew, though the believers, knew the time was coming. And so the Hebrew the writer wrote to the congregations, let us go forth. Let's go outside the camp, bearing his reproach. Let's leave this place, for here we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come. These were not just ethereal words. These were real words of the congregation of Elohim at that time, preparing, getting themselves ready to leave Jerusalem before that destruction, because they knew it was coming. How do we achieve unity? Achieving unity. Okay. I'm going to postpone the rest of this teaching for next time, because I'm running out of time, and it is important that I finish this. But what we've seen so far is this, that Sukkot is an important celebration, that we may always remember how Elohim magnificently, gloriously united his people as a living of over 1 million people, as a living organism, each with their specific place, with his divine presence leading them by night, by day. And that we should always remember that we are to be a united body. Because even as the tabernacle that he gave to Moses, we didn't go into that, but had all these different parts, but they were integrally connected with each other, each with a purpose, but making one tabernacle. The tabernacle could not function without any of its parts. So we are to be as Elohim. We've noticed that Elohim throughout the scriptures says he is the eternal sanctuary. All things exist within Elohim. All things. There's no such thing as outside of Elohim, because the heavens of heavens cannot contain him. But then we are to be like that. And we saw the necessity of being united. We saw how being not united, being divided, is destructive and harmful and weakens us. But we see how we are called. We see how we are called to be united. That is not an option. It's a command of Elohim. And it's a command also that if we don't unite, as we saw, we will be in a state of unfaithfulness that leads to perpetual failure. So we need to be united. There are benefits of being united because Elohim rejoices in it. He loves our unity, our communioning in him together. It helps us communicate his words effectively. It fosters pleasantness, gives us joy. We're not isolated, we're joy, and the Spirit works in us so that there's a spiritual synergy where the Spirit flows through us and encourages us, even though we are apart like this, miles apart from each other. Imagine if we were physically together. And we receive answers to prayers and fellowship and the fellowship of Messiah. Two things. We receive answers to our prayers and we have his fellowship. Okay? And it allows us to make decisions for the whole body. We can't make decisions for the eye or for the foot. The decision must be made for the whole body by the head, not by a man. And the word of Elohim has shown the congregation of Elohim, even till this day, exactly how to do. We're not boasting. It's not hidden from the congregation of Elohim. We've seen the scriptures. We know exactly what we need to do to, once we gather together, to fix the problems. It's just right now working real hard together to get the people united. All right, brethren. So I stop here. And as Elohim permits, we will continue next time to look at achieving the unity. Thank you for listening, brethren.